Welcome to this deep dive. We're tackling the world of export documentation, kind of overlooked, but incredibly important. We're unpacking excerpts from Scenario-Based Manual for Export Documentation in Shipping. And I was surprised by some of the wisdom in this book. You ready to be an export documentation ninja?
Absolutely. It's not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about optimizing the whole process, like fine-tuning a machine for peak performance.
I like that. The book dives right into email archiving and naming conventions. It's easy to overlook the basics, right?
Yeah. It's tempting to just fire off emails.
Yeah.
Say fires kind of randomly, but that can really backfire when you need to find information. A well-organized system, like a digital library for each shipment, can be a lifesaver.
So you have everything at your fingertips, but it's more than saving time, right?
Right. It reduces errors and misunderstandings. Everyone's on the same page with the same information. That transparency is crucial.
It's like a single source of truth for each shipment. Have you seen companies struggling with this?
More often than you'd think. I had one company. They were using all these different naming conventions for the same types of documents. It was chaos, especially when they had to audit a shipment.
So set up a good system early. The book also advocates for email templates and task management tools. At first I was like, is that too much? But then I realized the potential.
Imagine you're sending the same email multiple times a day with just different details. A template standardizes the core message.
While ensuring accurate.
Frees you up to focus on strategy.
Exactly. Pair that with a task management tool, and you can track deadlines, assign responsibilities, monitor progress.
It's like a project manager for each shipment. Keeps everything on track. Speaking of preventing problems, the book emphasizes double-checking everything. I'm guilty of rushing through things, but this book was a good reminder to slow down. Pay attention to the details.
It's not just about catching typos. It's about verifying every piece of information, like incorrect container sizes, wrong port codes, even a misspelled name can cause delays and extra cost. The book stresses documenting communication with ports and shippers. It sounds tedious, but I can see how it'd be valuable. Do you advise your clients to do that?
Absolutely. It creates a clear audit trail, shows what was communicated and when. In international shipping, things get complicated quickly. That documentation can really help.
Like a case file for each shipment. And speaking of proactive measures, the book encourages regular follow-ups with shippers and ports, like preventative maintenance for shipments.
Staying in communication can identify potential issues early before they become big problems. Think of it as course correction, not crisis management.
It's easier to adjust a ship's course a little than to get it back on track later.
Exactly. And technology can help with automated alerts and reminders.
Like a virtual assistant, constantly monitoring your shipments. Now, before we get too deep into tech, I want to circle back to the importance of software training and keeping shipping schedules up to date. These seem small, but they can have a big impact.
Oh yeah, they absolutely can. When your team knows the software well, it streamlines everything. Everyone knows how to input data, generate reports, troubleshoot issues.
Like a well-trained pit crew.
And just like a racing team needs accurate timing, the export process depends on up-to-date schedules when everyone has the latest info. On arrivals and departures, it minimizes confusion and delays.
Everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. It's all about creating a smooth flow.
Speaking of things that disrupt that flow, let's dive into the list of 51 common mistakes in export documentation.
It's a guide to the pitfalls that even experts can fall into. But awareness is the first step to prevention.
When I saw that list, I was like, oh no, have I been doing everything wrong? But then I realized this is a great learning opportunity.
It's like a cheat sheet.
So let's start unpacking these mistakes. One that stood out to me was incorrect container sizes or types. Seems basic, but I can see how it happens.
You see an order for a container and assume it's the standard size. But what if it's not? That can cause a lot of problems.
The shipment arrives, and the container's the wrong size. It's not just delays and confusion then, is it?
No. You're looking at storage fees, rehandling costs, maybe even needing a different container. It messes up the whole schedule and strains client relationships.
That brings up another point from the book, the potential damage to your reputation. If these errors keep happening, it's not just the money, it's the long-term impact.
Absolutely. Reputation is everything. Accurate and efficient documentation can set you apart.
It's about building trust with your clients. Okay, let's move on. Another common mistake. Inputting the wrong port of loading or discharge. Seems simple, but the consequences can be big.
You're sending a container on a wild goose chase. It could end up on the wrong ship. going to the wrong continent.
So many frantic phone calls and emails.
Yeah, and it's not just the money. It's also the time lost and the impact on the client.
It really shows how important it is to verify every piece of information. We all make typos, but here, a small mistake can have big consequences.
That's why it's important to have checks and balances.
It's like a safety net.
Exactly. And we'll talk more about those safety nets as we keep exploring these common mistakes. So, another mistake is not confirming the shipping order details. With a shipper, it's easy to think that the first order is final, but things change, right? Shipments get adjusted, quantities can change. And if that's not in the documentation, you're going to have trouble.
It's like building a house with the wrong blueprints.
Exactly. Like, say the order says 10 boxes, but they send 12. Those extra boxes can mess everything up. Delays, fees, figuring out what happened.
And then there's incorrect weight or measurements. Seems small, but I can see how it could impact things.
Oh, absolutely. Shipping lines need accurate data for everything, like freight charges and loading the ship safely. Imagine the weight is way off.
It could make the ship unbalanced, right?
Yeah. Worst case, the ship could be unsafe to sail.
That's a big reminder that accuracy is crucial. Okay, here's one I think we've all experienced. Miscommunication about deadlines, like for free time or container availability.
Yeah. Demurrage charges, they can be a problem.
It's like a game of Tetris with a timer.
Exactly. You have a limited time
Yeah.
to pick up and return the container. Miss it. And the fees start adding up.
So clear communication is key. Everyone needs to know the deadlines.
Absolutely. The shipper and the customer service team need to be on the same page.
Speaking of crucial documents, the book talks about sending draft bills of lading for confirmation. Could you explain what a bill of lading is and why this step is important?
Sure. A bill of lading, it's basically a contract between the shipper and the carrier, has all the shipment details, type of goods, quantity, destination, terms of carriage. It's also a receipt for the goods and a documented title, so it can transfer ownership.
So it has to be right. Why send a draft, though?
Imagine the bill of lading
Right.
has a wrong address. The shipment arrives, but it can't be delivered. Now you have delays, storage fees, and an unhappy client.
A small mistake can cause big problems.
Right. Sending a draft lets the shipper check everything. It prevents problems later on.
Like an extra set of eyes to catch mistakes. And speaking of preventing problems, the book talks about customs documentation. It can be tricky. What are some common problems there?
One challenge is that customs rules are different everywhere. What's okay in one country might be banned in another. If you don't follow the rules, you can have delays, fines, even your shipment seized.
So you have to know the rules for each country.
Yeah, and the rules are always changing. It's best to work with a customs broker. They know the rules well.
Like having a local guide.
Exactly.
Okay, here's another mistake. Not updating vessel arrival times. Seems simple, but it could be a problem.
It can. Let's say the ship was supposed to arrive Thursday, but now it's coming Saturday. If no one knows, the shipper might show up Thursday, and their container isn't there.
And what if it arrives early and the shipper isn't ready?
Yeah, then you have storage fees and disruptions.
Everyone needs to know about changes.
Absolutely, even small changes.
It's like a dance where everyone needs to know the steps.
That's a good way to put it.
And finally, let's talk about archiving and backing up documents.
It's one of those things you don't think about until you need it. But having all your documents organized can be so helpful. Imagine a client has a problem with an invoice from months ago. You need the bill of lading, the packing list, everything.
But what if you can't find them?
Exactly. A good archive is like insurance. You know you can find what you need.
It's not just about the rules, it's about protecting your business.
Absolutely. It's about thinking long term. And those basic tasks, like organization and documentation, they're really important. And that leads us to another group of common mistakes.
Yeah. One mistake is not telling the shipper deadlines clearly. It's easy to think everyone's on the same page, but that's not always true.
Especially with people in different time zones.
Yeah.
And with different levels of experience.
Right. Like, say the deadline is Friday at 5. But whose 5 p.m. is it? The shippers, the carriers, the destination ports.
One little misunderstanding could mess everything up.
Exactly. And it's not just the initial deadline. It's about communicating changes, too. Delays happen. Schedules change. If people don't know, it causes problems. It's like an orchestra where everyone has different music.
That's a good one. Communication is the conductor.
Speaking of disruptions, the book also says, don't ignore system alerts. We see so many notifications these days, it's easy to tune them out.
Yeah. but those alerts could be important.
So we need to use technology, but also pay attention.
Right, technology helps. But we still need to think for ourselves.
The book gives good advice. What mistakes do you see most often? And what advice do you give companies?
One common mistake is not getting the right export licenses. You'd be surprised how often people forget this.
So you need to know the rules.
Yeah. If you don't follow the rules, there can be big consequences.
What about miscommunication about deadlines? How can companies prevent that?
One way is to have a standard communication system, like a shared calendar, or automated reminders, or one person who handles all communication.
So everyone's on the same page.
Right. And shippers need to communicate too, if they have problems or changes.
The book also talks about forgetting signatures.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot, especially with so many documents.
How do you prevent that?
Use a checklist.
Is that enough?
A good checklist can really help.
Like a co-pilot.
Exactly.
And last, let's talk about technology. The book says it can streamline things.
Yeah, there's a lot of software out there that can automate tasks and improve accuracy, like EDI systems. They let you exchange documents electronically.
So you don't have to do so much paperwork.
Right. And these tools are getting easier to use.
So to sum it up,
Right.
What are the key takeaways?
I would say organization, accuracy, and communication.
Can you explain this?
Sure. Organization means having a system for your documents. Accuracy is important for everything you do. And communication keeps everyone connected.
So it's more than just forms.
It is. If you do this well, it can really help your business.
It's about making things smooth and successful.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot today.
Thank you for being here. I learned a lot.
It was my pleasure. Remember, export documentation can be challenging, but you could do it.
Keep learning and happy exporting.